Imagine this. You've saved up for months, maybe even years, and you're finally ready to buy your first serious adventure bike. You walk into the dealership and there they are, side by side, the Honda NX500 and the Honda Transalp P750. Both are brand new, both carry Honda's legendary reliability, and both promise adventure on and off the road. But here's the problem. Which one really makes sense for you, especially if you're planning to use it daily? This isn't just about horsepower or price tags. It's about living with the bike every single day, and that's where most riders get stuck. The NX500 has been making waves as a practical, approachable adventure bike that balances city riding with weekend fun. On the other hand, the Transalp 750 has the bigger engine, the premium features, and the aura of being a true ADV machine. So naturally, people assume bigger means better. But is it? That's the question we're going to break down. Here's the curiosity. Many riders in the US are realizing that medium-sized bikes like the NX500 might actually serve them better than bigger machines like the Transalp P750, even though the 750 looks more attractive on paper. Why? Because daily use is not about showing off torque curves or quoting spec sheets. It's about how a bike feels when you ride it to work, when you sit in traffic, when you go for a quick grocery run, and when you take that occasional trip out of town. And this is where the debate between the NX500 and the Transalp 750 becomes really interesting. Think about the weight difference. On the road, every extra pound matters when you're commuting through tight traffic or maneuvering in a parking lot. The NX500 is noticeably lighter, which makes it much easier for less experienced riders, and even for seasoned ones who just want a bike that doesn't fight them. The Transalp 750, while still manageable, adds that extra bulk you'll feel every time you park on an incline or need to make a tight U-turn. So if you plan to ride every day, comfort and ease of handling might actually trump raw power. And let's not forget cost of ownership. In the US market, not only is the Transalp 750 more expensive up front, but it also carries higher insurance premiums and slightly higher maintenance costs. The NX500, by contrast, fits perfectly into that sweet spot, affordable to buy, affordable to run, and still capable enough to give you the thrill of adventure riding on weekends. But here's the real kicker, the question of identity. When you ride the NX500, you feel like you own a bike that's designed for practicality, reliability, and comfort. When you ride the Transalp 750, you feel like you're on a bike that wants to prove itself every time you twist the throttle. Which one of those matches your life better? That's the deeper question we'll explore. So in this video, we're not just going to compare numbers on a spec sheet. We're going to dive into what really matters for everyday riders in the US. The kind of person who uses their bike for commuting during the week, but also wants something that can handle back roads and maybe even light trails on the weekend. In the next part, we'll break down the strengths and weaknesses of each machine, not in theory but in practice. You'll see why one might save you from frustration while the other could surprise you with its versatility. Because at the end of the day, choosing between the NX500 and the Transalp 750 isn't just about picking a bike. It's about choosing a lifestyle, and that's what makes this debate so fascinating. Now let's break this down in detail. On paper, the Honda Transalp 750 looks like the obvious winner. A bigger engine, more power, more road presence. It delivers about 90 horsepower compared to the NX500's 47. That's almost double the output, and for many riders, those numbers alone close the deal. But real riding isn't lived on a spec sheet, and this is where the debate begins to shift. Take city riding, for example. In heavy traffic, power is the last thing you worry about. What matters most is weight, throttle response, and how forgiving the bike feels in stop-and-go situations. The NX500 shines here. Its parallel twin engine delivers smooth and predictable power. It doesn't overwhelm you when the light turns green, and it won't punish you if you make a mistake. The Transalp 750, on the other hand, gives you that extra surge of torque. Fun on the open road, but in tight urban spaces, it can feel like overkill. Controlling a heavier, more powerful bike when you're tired or distracted isn't always pleasant. And that's the reality most riders don't think about until it's too late. Now, let's talk about highways. This is where the Transalp 750 shows its strength. Cruising at 75 miles on an interstate, the larger engine feels effortless. It maintains speed without breaking a sweat, even with luggage or a passenger. The NX500 can still do highway speeds, but it works harder to keep up. And if you're riding long distances, you'll feel the difference in vibration and rider fatigue. For riders who travel coast to coast, the Transalp becomes the clear choice. But if your commute is mostly city and short freeway stretches, the NX500 handles that just fine without adding unnecessary bulk. Another point is fuel economy. The NX500 consistently gives better mileage, often reaching over 60 mpg depending on riding style. That means fewer stops at the gas station and lower running costs. The Transalp 750, while not a gas guzzler, averages closer to the mid-40s in mpg. Over years of riding, that difference adds up, especially for someone who rides daily. Handling is another key factor. The NX500, with its lighter weight and lower seat height, feels more approachable for a wide range of riders. If you're under 6 feet tall or not used to taller bikes, the NX500 is far less intimidating. The Transalp 750 has a taller stance and longer suspension travel, which makes it better for rough terrain, but also more challenging for riders who aren't comfortable handling bigger machines. Imagine pulling into a parking lot with uneven ground or a gravel patch. The NX500 feels nimble, while the Transalp requires more confidence and physical effort. But here's where the conflict really sharpens. Identity versus practicality. The Transalp 750 carries the aura of a premium adventure bike. It feels like a machine built to cross continents, a motorcycle that screams capability and long-distance confidence. It looks the part, and for many riders that's important. The NX500, by contrast, has a more modest image. It's the reliable workhorse, the one that gets you to the office during the week and still lets you have fun on a dirt road on Saturday. It doesn't carry the same badge of adventure prestige, but it doesn't need to. And this is why riders struggle with the choice. The Transalp 750 is aspirational. It represents the dream of adventure riding. The NX500 is realistic. It represents how most people actually use their bikes every day. So the question becomes, do you buy the dream or do you buy what fits your life? That's the tension that defines this comparison. And it's why both bikes are selling well in the US. In the final part, we'll step back and reflect on which bike really makes the most sense depending on the rider you are, and why sometimes the smarter choice isn't the one you expect. So, after looking at the details, which one truly makes sense as a daily rider? Let's strip away the hype and go straight to what matters. If your reality is commuting to work, running errands, and occasionally hitting the back roads, the Honda NX500 is probably the smarter choice. It's lighter, easier to handle in tight spaces, more fuel efficient, and significantly more affordable in both upfront cost and ownership. It asks less of you physically and financially, while still giving you the confidence to take on weekend adventures. For many riders, that's exactly what they need. A bike that doesn't turn every ride into a workout or every service bill into a headache. But if your vision of riding involves long-distance touring, crossing states and carrying luggage or a passenger regularly, the Transalp 750 becomes the logical upgrade. The extra horsepower and torque aren't just about bragging rights. They translate into smoother highway cruising, better load handling, and the ability to eat miles with less fatigue. It feels like a bike designed for serious journeys, not just the daily grind. For riders who dream of real adventure riding or want a machine that can grow with them as their skills and ambitions expand, the Transalp delivers that promise. The key lesson here is that bigger doesn't automatically mean better. Too many riders in the US end up buying large displacement bikes thinking it's the proper choice, only to find themselves intimidated, overwhelmed, or simply frustrated with the day-to-day reality of living with it. Smaller or mid-sized bikes like the NX500 often bring more miles per mile because they're easier to use, easier to maintain, and ultimately, they fit into the real lives that most people lead. At the same time, there's no denying the emotional pull of the Transalp 750. It has presence. It makes a statement. And for many, that matters as much as practicality. Riding a motorcycle is never just about transportation. It's about identity, passion, and how the machine makes you feel every time you put on your helmet. If sitting on the Transalp lights a fire in your chest and makes you imagine the horizon opening up, then maybe that feeling alone justifies the extra cost and wait. So, which one should you buy? Here's my answer as someone who has been riding and testing bikes for years. If you're honest with yourself about how you'll actually ride 90% of the time, the NX500 is the clear winner for most everyday riders. It's the tool that matches the job. But if your heart tells you that riding is about chasing distance, about crossing state lines and pushing limits, then the Transalp 750 is worth the stretch. In the end, choosing between these two bikes isn't just a mechanical decision. It's a reflection of who you are as a rider and who you want to become. The NX500 says, I value practicality, balance, and reliability. The Transalp 750 says, I'm ready for the big adventure, even if it's not every day. Both are right answers. The only mistake is not being clear about what you really need. So next time you're standing in that dealership, staring at both bikes side by side, don't ask yourself which one looks better on a YouTube spec chart. Ask yourself which one will make you ride more, enjoy more, and live the life you actually want. Because at the end of the day, the best motorcycle isn't the one with the biggest engine. It's the one that gets you out on the road the most.